Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Guys and Magic. This is Hunter coming at you with another EDH deck tech. That is right, we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite legends from the newest set, that is Bloomborough. We're going to be building a deck around it. What legend might that be? Well, that's a Gev Scaled Scorch. That is right. Before we dive into what this commander is and what kind of the deck wants to do, I just want to remind everybody to hit that like button so we know that you like these kind of videos. And also subscribe so you're staying up to date with all the videos that we got going on. So let's go ahead and start this one off. This is Gev Scaled Scorch. It's a mouthful. It is just black and red for a 3/2 legendary creature, Lizard Mercenary. It's got Ward, pay 2 life, and it also says other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. And it also says whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev Scaled Scorch deals 1 damage to target opponent. Simple, to the point. As you guys may or may not know, I am a huge fan of dinosaurs. I own a dinosaur deck, Gishath to be specific. So when I saw lizards kind of getting some love, I thought, it's kind of like a toned down dinosaur deck. Dinosaurs are all about big smash. Well, lizards here, they're all about just pinging people. So that's what we're going to be doing. We are making a kindred deck based around Gev, so the majority of it is going to go ahead and be lizards. Very excited. A lot of new lizards came from this set, so a lot are going into it. And also, that cool second part of the text there is other creatures you control. So even if it's not a lizard, if an opponent had lost life, they enter with a +1/+1 counter. So I am the +1/+1 counter guy here on the channel. Why not make another deck? Rakdos, lizards, +1/+1 counters. Bit of pinging. We're just trying to be annoying to our opponents. This deck, this is how I'm building it. We are in the budget range of $300 to $400. That's kind of how we like to do the deck text here. Obviously, you can interchange any card that you want. If you want to see the full deck list, description. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about the Planeswalker first. Angrath the Flamed Chained is 3 black-red for a starting loyalty of 4. It's got a +1 that says each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. It's got a -3 that says gain control of target creature till end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step if it has mana value 3 or less. And a -8, which is its ultimate, that says each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Very cool ultimate there. This really, we're just trying to be annoying. So this +1 ability of each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, we're just hitting all of our opponents every time we plus that up. So Angrath here kind of sticks on theme with pinging. Now let's move on to the lizards themselves. Specifically, let's talk about the lizards from Bloomborough that really make up the bulk of this deck. So this first lizard is Agate Instigator, is 1 and a red for a 1/3 creature lizard rogue. It has an offspring of an additional 1 and a red, so it means you can make a 1/1 copy of it if you pay the extra. And it says whenever another creature you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. Once again, sticking on the lizard theme, sticking on the pinging thing. It's a good lizard. Cindering Cutthroat is 2 in a hybrid black or red. It's a 3/2 creature lizard assassin. It enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. If an opponent lost life this turn, you could pay 1 in a hybrid black-red. It gains menace until end of turn. We have Gev on the field as a turn 2 drop. We got this as a turn 3 drop. It enters with 2 +1/+1 counters. Fireglass Mentor is a black and a red for a 2/1 creature lizard warlock. It says at the beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. Until end of turn, you may play that card. Little, very cool, just card advantage there in your second main phase. Granted, keep in mind, if you have already tapped out while playing this card, make sure you're playing it on your second main phase. You don't want to lose those cards because it is until end of turn. Flame Cash Gecko, 1 and a red for a 2/2 creature lizard warlock. It says when it enters, if an opponent lost life this turn, add a black and a red. You could pay 1 and a red, discard a card, draw a card. So just more card advantage there with the ability there, and it just replaces itself with 2 more mana. Hearthborn Battler is 2 and a red for a 2/3 creature lizard warlock. It's got haste, and it says whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Hearthborn Battler deals 2 damage to target opponent. So if your opponents are just playing Magic or you're just playing Magic and somebody casts 2 spells on their turn, no matter what point, this is going to deal 2 damage to any opponent that you want. Hired Claw is just 1 red mana, probably my favorite from the new set. It's 1/2 for a creature lizard mercenary. It says whenever you attack with 1 or more lizards, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent. 1 and a red, put a +1/+1 counter on Hired Claw. Activate only if an opponent lost life this turn and only once each turn. So Hired Claw is just going to sit there and ping an opponent every time we attack, and we're going to pay mana into it. This is going to continue to get bigger and bigger. Helps with all the themes that we're doing here. Iridescent Vine Slasher is 1 black for a 1/2 creature lizard assassin. Once again, offspring of 2. It's got landfall. It says whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. We are so annoying. Reptilian Recruiter is 3 and 2 red for a 4/2 creature lizard warrior. It's got trample, and it says when it enters, choose target creature. If that creature is power 2 or less, or if you control another lizard, which we probably will, gain control of that creature till end of turn, untap it, it gains haste till end of turn. So if something was in our way of attacking our opponents, this comes in, our Geb is already there, we ping an opponent, we take that creature, we swing into the creature. Yeah, it's cool. Thought Stalker Warlock, 2 and a black for a 2/2 lizard warlock, believe it or not. It's got menace, and it says when it enters, choose target opponent. If they lost life this turn, they reveal their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and they discard that card. Otherwise, they discard a card. So if we had our opponent lose life, we're going to look at their hand, take their best thing, toss it away. If this was coming down and their opponent didn't lose life, still target an opponent, they still have to discard. We just don't get to look at the hand. Frilled Spark Shooter is our final brand new lizard. It's 3 and a red for a 3/3 creature lizard archer. It's got menace, it's got reach, and it says it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn. So very similarly to the old Cindering Cutthroat, we are going to probably cast this after we've cast Gev. It enters with 2 counters. The final 2 brand new cards that we are throwing in that not specifically lizards, but they are both valleys in our color. Valley Flamecaller and Valley Rotcaller. I think they're fantastic. Valley Flamecaller is 2 and a red for a 3/3 creature lizard warlock. It says if a lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage +1 instead. So instead of pinging for 1, we're now pinging for 2. Valley Rotcaller is 1 and a black for a 1/3 creature squirrel warlock. That is right, it is not a lizard. However, it's got menace, and it says whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. So because we are lizards, we're getting that trigger pretty consistently. If you have a big board, we're going to be really taking down some people's life, and we're going to be gaining life too. Let's move on to some other lizards that are not from Bloomburrow, starting with Chandra's Pyreling. 1 and a red for a 1/3 creature elemental lizard. It says whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Pyreling gets +1/+0 and gains double strike until end of turn. So we are going to do that pretty frequently. Greywater's Fixer, 2 black red for a 4/4 creature lizard mercenary. It says each outlaw creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. In case you don't remember, Encore says exile it and pay its Encore cost. For each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn. If able, they gain haste. Sacrifice them all at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't know if you guys have been listening to the other subtype of the creatures besides lizards. All lizards are pretty much outlaws. If you guys don't remember, outlaws are like mercenaries and warlocks, assassins. It's what lizards are. It's fantastic here. So Greywater's Fixer, really good include. Hall Monitor is 1 red mana for a 1/1 creature lizard shaman. It's got haste. It's got another ability. We can pay 1 and a red. Tap it. Target creature can't block this turn. So if you want to get in for damage, go ahead and just make something not be able to block and hit that opponent. Hellspur Posse Boss, 2 and 2 red for a 2/4 creature lizard rogue. Other outlaws you control have haste. Once again, lizards, most of them are outlaws. Little reminder text: assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks. So yes. When Hellspur Posse Boss enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 red mercenary creature tokens with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. That's cool. We'll take that. Just some extra damage to tap and add it to another creature. Sure. Hissing Iguanar is 2 and a red, 3/1 creature lizard. Whenever another creature dies, you may have Hissing Iguanar deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. Guess what? That doesn't say whenever another one of our creature dies. So any creature on the battlefield, if it dies, we can ping people. Kedis, Amberclaw Familiar, 1 and a red for a 1/1 legendary creature elemental lizard. It says whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be pinging more people with our commander's ability, but that combat damage, we swing in with Gev, we hit everybody with Gev, and that's pretty good. Laughing Jasper Flint, 1 black-red, 4/3 legendary creature, lizard rogue. Creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. So this guy go ahead and just makes everybody on our team outlaws. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of a target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So, as long as we have a bunch of lizards on the field with Laughing Jasper Flint, we're going to be playing our opponent's decks, and that sounds fun to me. Lizard Blades, of course, we're a lizard deck, and Lizard Blade has to go in it, right? It's 1 and a red for a 1/1 artifact creature, Equipment Lizard. It's got double strike. Equipped creature has double strike. You can reconfigure for 2. Magebane Lizard, 1 and a red for a 1/4 creature lizard. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Magebane Lizard deals damage to that player equal to the number of non-creature spells they've cast this turn. So, if this is just sitting on the field and our opponent just starts casting non-creature spells, if they cast that first one, 1 damage to you. If you cast 2, that's 2 more damage to you. Really want to cast a third one? 3 more damage to you. That seems pretty mean. Scorch Spitter is 1 red for a 1/1 that says whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. That's very self-explanatory. Spitfire Lagak is 3 and a red for a 3/4 creature lizard. It's got landfall. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is kind of like an iridescent Vine Lasher where we deal damage to an opponent, except that only did damage to a target opponent. This one is dealing damage to all of our opponents. And the final lizard, before we get into some other things that I want to talk about, is Taurine Mauler. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2 creature shapeshifter. It is a changeling, which means this card is every creature type, which means it is a lizard. And it says whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Taurine Mauler. Guess what? We will never, ever, ever do the not may. So always put a +1/+1 counter on it. Our opponents are playing Magic. We're going to be making this bigger. Moving on to what I like to call lizards, because they have currently errated. So Viashinos are now lizards, according to Magic. WotC has gone ahead and changed all the Viashinos to lizards. So let's talk about some Viashinos that trigger our commander, because they're lizards now. Mezio Mugger is 4 and a red for a 3/3 creature Viashino Rogue. Should say lizard rogue. Whenever it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. You may play those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were any mana of any color to cast those spells. It also has a blitz cost of 2 and a red. Just a really fun card here. Once again, similarly to the Laughing Jasper Flint, we are going to be playing our opponent's things. Riveteer's Requisitioner is 1 and a red for a 3/1 creature Viashino Rogue, Lizard Rogue. It says when it dies, you create a treasure token. It's also got a blitz of 2 and a red. Viashino Heretic is 2 and a red for a 1/3. This is a very old card, so bear with me as I read this poorly worded text. It's 1 and a red. You can tap it, destroy target artifact. Viashino Heretic deals to that artifact's controller damage equal to the artifact's total casting cost. Old wording is dumb. It says destroy target artifact. It deals damage equal to its mana value to the opponent that you destroyed. Viashino Sand Sprinter is 1 and a red for a 4/1. It's got trample, it's got haste, and it says at the beginning of the end step, return Viashino Sand Sprinter to its owner's hand. It's also got a cycling of 1 red mana. So yeah, Viashinos are now lizards. And we're here for it. Moving on to the final bulk of our creatures, it is just non-lizards that just really help this deck. And keep in mind that if our opponent did take damage and Gev is on the field, these also enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter. This first one, Roaming Throne, 4 generic mana. It is slowly becoming my absolute favorite card. 4/4 artifact creature golem. It's got ward 2, and it enters the battlefield. You choose a creature type, lizard. It is the chosen type, as addition to all the other types. And it says, if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So, yes, we'll be pinging a lot more times. Just all of our lizards are just going to be consistently just doing double the amount of work. Osier Axanel Deepest Might is 2 and 2 red for a 4/4 legendary creature god. It's got trample, and it says if a red sorcery we control deal an amount of non-combat damage less than Osier Axanel's power to an opponent, that source deals damage equal to Osier Axanel's power instead. And when this dies, you return to the battlefield tapped and transform it under its owner's control. Before we talk about that part, I just want to say, if Gav is on the field and this is on the field and we're casting lizards, Gev is now going to deal 4 damage to every opponent. But if this came in with a counter on it, so it's, let's say it's a 5/5, every lizards that we cast with Gev on the field is going to be doing 5 damage to a target opponent, which sounds pretty good to me. So like I said, if this died, it turns into Temple of Power. It's a land, taps for a red. You can also pay 2 and a red, tap it to transform it. Activate only if red sources you control dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, and only as a sorcery. It's very easy to do in this deck. And the final creature that we are throwing in is another god. It is Purphoros, God of the Forge. 3 in a red, 6/5, legendary enchantment creature god. It's indestructible as long as your devotion to red is less than 5. It's not a creature. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each opponent. So we have a hefty creature package. So this is going to be pinging quite often to every opponent. Going to get annoying. 2 and a red also. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Just a little extra damage if we needed it. So yeah, that is all of our creature package. A lot there. Very exciting. Just trying to get really annoying and just ping. Ping, 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 ping. Like I said, lizards are the baby brothers of dinosaurs. We're not trying to do a bunch of damage. We're trying to do a little bit of damage and win that way. Time to move on to the sorcery package. Let's hit it off with some removal first. Blasphemous Act. 8 in a red, sorcery. Spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. It deals 13 damage to each creature. There is your board wipe for essentially 1 mana. If we are just far behind, wipe the board, start over. Toxic Deluge, similar situation. 2 and a black for sorcery. Pays an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. Yeah, we just go bye-bye to the whole board. Feed the Swarm, also going in here. 1 and a black for sorcery. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Just a bit of flexibility there for some removal. If we have a pesky creature or a pesky enchantment that's really bothering us, take it out with Feed the Swarm. Back in Town. X, 2 and a black for sorcery. Return X target outlaw creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Like I mentioned, we have a ton of outlaws. Lizards are mostly outlaws, so if we had a board wipe go off and our stuff is destroyed, they are back in town. Fiery Confluence is 2 and 2 red for a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. You can have it deal 1 damage to each creature. You can have it deal 2 damage to each opponent, or you can destroy target artifact. The flexibility on this card is fantastic, especially for our deck. If we are just pinging down our opponents and they're just sitting at really low life, I would just hit 2 damage to each opponent 3 times, deal 6 damage to the board. Hopefully this is a finishing card. Otherwise, destroy some pesky artifacts. Signed in Blood for a little bit of card draw here is 2 black mana for a sorcery. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Like I said, we're going to be targeting ourselves unless by any chance we draw this card and our opponent has 2 life left, in which case we will just force it upon them. Otherwise, we're drawing 2 and losing 2, which is fine. Moving on to some instants. Once again, we'll remove some stuff with these cards. Terminate, black and a red. Instant, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Bedevil, 2 black and a red for an instant. Destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. Very good. And my favorite, which is just chaos. It is Chaos Warp. It's 2 and a red instant. That owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it on the battlefield. So it's all about kind of a roulette. We're going to see what you can get. It could be better, it could be worse, it could be nothing, and that would be really cool. But I love Chaos Warp here. The next 2 instants we are adding in here a bit of modal spells. It's Culligan's Command, 1 a black and a red for an instant. Choose 2. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Target player discards card. Destroy target artifact. Or colors against command deals 2 damage to any target. This just kind of does everything we wanted to do. If we had something die that we really want back, go ahead and bring it back with closing command. And once again, pinging people for damage. Similarly, Rakdos Charm is going to also hurt some people. It is black and a red. Instant, choose one. Exile target player's graveyard. Destroy target artifact. Or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. So if we have a bunch of creatures, that will deal damage to us. But if our opponents have a bunch of creatures, they're going to be taking a bunch of damage too if we do that third mode. Otherwise, if we are playing up against, I don't know, let's say a reanimation deck, we are going to hurt that player pretty badly if we exile their graveyard. So flexibility. Moving on to the final 3 instants, we have 2 brand new cards and 1 kind of staple that like I said, we're just in a budget of $300 to $400, so I have the budget to spend. Otherwise, you can replace these kind of cards with cheaper cards. It's kind of the same effect. But Hazel's Nocturne is 3 and a black for an instant. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So, a little bit of reanimation there. If we really needed our creatures to come back, bring it back, and we're also gaining life and draining life. Scales of Shale, 2 and a black, instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each lizard you control. So it'll probably ever only cost 1 black mana. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. Yes, please. And our final card that I really mentioned, we can swap it out. This is one of the more expensive ones. I think it's like $30-something at the time of this recording. Deflecting Swat, 2 and a red, instant. If you control a commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. You may choose new targets for the target of spell or ability. Swat away anything that's trying to mess with our stuff. Just no. Deflecting Swat. Everybody knows what this card is. It's really good here, and I just felt like it was needed. All right, let's move on to the artifact package. That's right, we will start with some rocks. Everybody loves the rocks. So first and foremost, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Felwar Stone. Everybody knows what these do, right? Soul Ring can tap for 2 colorless. Arcane can tap for any color in your commander's color identity, and Felwar can tap for any kind of mana that your opponent can produce. So it's just extra mana if, whatever reason, nobody's running black or red at the table but you. Otherwise, you're probably going to get your color eventually. Mindstone, Talisman of Indulgence. Mindstone, you can tap for colorless. You can also pay 1, tap it, sack it to draw a card. In a pinch, late game, sacrifice Mindstone. And Talisman of Indulgence is an artifact you can tap for a colorless, or you can tap it for a black or red and it deal 1 damage to you. Moving on to our other kind of package of artifacts. These are the Kindred stuff. So all these kind of care about creature types. And remember, we are always saying lizard for these. So this first one is Herald's Horn. 3 mana artifact. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type lizard. Creature spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. Just a little bit of extra card advantage there if we just show everybody, hey, look, there's a lizard on top. Put it in your hand, draw a new card for the beginning of your turn. Patchwork Banner is the brand new card from Bloomburrow as well. 3 generic mana artifact. Enters the battlefield. Choose a creature type lizard. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, and you can also tap to add it for a mana of any color. This is one of my favorite brand new mana rocks. I love how 3 mana rocks are just slowly getting better over time. It's like, well, they don't do enough. Now they're starting to do a lot more. So giving +1/+1 to all of our team, really good. Urza's Incubator, 3 mana artifact. As it enters battlefield, choose a creature type. It's getting redundant at this point. Creatures spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. Vanquisher's Banner. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type as well. And creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1. And whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, you draw a card. So just extra card draw on top of that. Really, really good. Moving on to our final artifacts. This is also an expensive card. They need to reprint this tomorrow. The Ozolith. It is so good. I throw it into all of my +1/+1 counter decks because what happens when our counters go away? We need something, right? And that's what the Ozolith is. It's 1 mana for a legendary artifact that says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. And at the beginning of the combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may remove all counters onto a target creature. So essentially, if our creatures go away, all their +1/+1 counters go onto the Ozolith, and it just stays there. And then when our creatures come out, we can move all those counters onto another creature. And if that dies, it moves it back. And if you see what I'm saying? The counters just don't go away, and that's really good. Lightning Greaves, 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has haste and shroud. Equipped cost is 0. Swiftfoot Boots, 2 mana. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Equipped cost of 1. So these two just kind of protect our game plan. I know our Gev has ward, but ward is not enough, especially when people are like, I'll just pay 2 light, that's fine. So we're just going to protect them with Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. Keep in mind, if anything does have the Lightning Greaves on it and you're trying to target it, you cannot target your creature with Lightning Greaves. Shroud doesn't let anybody target, including yourself. Hexproof, you can target. Here we go. Enchantment time. Impact Tremors. 1 and a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. You saw the creature package. It is hefty. Impact Tremors will come in clutch. Molten Echoes. 2 and 2 red. Enchantment, as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Probably going to say lizards if you haven't heard that already. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, you create a token that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. You've seen a lot of these kind of lizards have an ETB effect. Molten Echoes is going to give us an extra ETB effect, and then you can swing in with it. Let's say the Thought Stalker Warlock. We ping someone, that enters, we're going to look at someone's hand, we're going to take their best thing. Oh, what if they didn't have anything else? That's good. Well, then the other one comes in and we can target another opponent's. You get what I'm saying? As long as those opponents have taken damage. And they have Menace, so swing in. Uncivil Unrest is also going in. 4 and a red for an enchantment. It says non-token creatures you control have Riot, meaning they can enter with haste or they can enter with a +1/+1 counter. It says if a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. So if we can get a +1/+1 counter on to Gev, let's say Uncivil Unrest is on the field and then we cast Gev, we will take the Riot choice of +1/+1 counter. Every time we're casting a lizard after that, Gev will now deal double the amount of pinging damage. Yes. These final enchantments that I am adding in here, we are trying to up the scale of our damage quite a bit. So City on Fire, 5 and 3 red enchantment. It's got Convoke, which is great because we are creature heavy, so this may never even cost anything but tapping our creatures down. It says if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. Fiery Emancipation is the same kind of thing. 3 and 3 red for an enchantment. If a source you can control deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. And Dictate of the Twin Gods. 3 and 2 red for an enchantment that's got Flash. And it says if a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to a permanent or player instead. You might be thinking to yourself, well, it's not that much damage if you're just pinging someone in the face and one of these are out and you're doing, let's say, triple damage with a City on Fire. You're only doing 3 damage to someone's face. Keep in mind that it is all damage, so that includes combat damage. If you're swinging with your creatures, you're doing triple the amount of damage with City on Fire. You're doing double the amount of damage with Dictate of the Twin Gods. It is really going to be a problem, and I love that. And our last enchantment is going to be Phyrexian Arena. It is 1 and 2 black for an enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card, lose life. Just a little bit of extra card draw in there as well. And finally, to wrap up this video, let's talk about our land package. We are a Kindred deck, so we will start with the Kindred lands. Cavern of Souls, the big baddie here. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, obviously. You tap it. Add a colorless. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. We can guarantee our lizards get onto the field with the Cavern of Souls. Mudflat Village and Rockface Village, 2 brand new lands from Bloomburrow that I felt like were really, really powerful and just really good for Kindred. Mudflat, you can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap it for a black to spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. And it has another ability. You could pay 1 and a black, tap it, sacrifice Mudflat Village, return target bat, lizard, rat, or squirrel from your graveyard or your hand. So something that we really liked died. That was a lizard. sacrifice Mudflat Village, go and get it back. In Rockface Village, you can tap to add a colorless. You can also tap to add a red, spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. You can also pay 1 red, tap it, target lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon gets +1/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Get in for damage right away. Get in for a little bit of extra damage. Rockface Village is a very good card. Secluded Courtyard. Land enters the battlefield. You choose a lizard. You can tap it to add a colorless. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend that mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, or activate an ability of a creature source of the chosen type. 3 Tree City. This, you go and pick up as many copies as you can of this card. This card is going to skyrocket in price. I'm calling it now. Today, whenever you watch this video, hopefully the price hasn't gone up too dramatically, but it's only going to go up. It's a legendary land, enters the battlefield. You choose Lizard. You can tap it to add a colorless. You could pay 2, tap it, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to the number of creatures you control of the chosen type. Yeah. If we have a lot of lizards on the field, we're going to be tapping for quite a bit more mana. Unclaimed Territory. Enters the battlefield, you choose Lizard. You can tap for a colorless. You can also tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend its only mana to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. This final kind of kindred land here kind of comes in all the precons. It's Path of Ancestry. Unfortunately, it always enters the battlefield tapped. Only downside here. But you can also tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. But when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you scry 1. So we are a kindred deck. This is a really good card here. Moving on to some fetches. Yeah, we are adding fetches in here. You saw a bit of a landfall package with a couple of creatures. Let's take advantage of that if we ever have these in hand. So Bloodstained Mire, you can tap it to pay 1 life, sacrifice it, search your library for a swamp or mountain, put that on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Keep in mind, it does not say basic. Go ahead and grab any duel that might be in the deck. Evolving Wilds, you can also tap it, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, shuffle, and Fabled Passage, recent reprint from this set. Tap, sacrifice, Fabled Passage, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Then if you control 4 or more lands, untap that land. That's Fabled Passage is just Evolving Wilds on steroids, and I love it. Here's some utility cards that I feel like are really good. Once again, we are going to shut down a Reanimator deck. Sorry about it. We're running black, so you should run Bojuka Bog. Always enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters, exile target player's graveyard. Sorry. Taps for a black. Garn's Bastion helps with the +1/+1 counter theme. Tap it to add a colorless, or you can pay 4, tap it, proliferate. So pump the team up. Rogue's Passage is another land. You could tap to add a colorless. Also pay 4, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Really get in there for some damage. And Shivan Gorge, legendary land, tap it for a colorless or pay 2 and a red. Tap it, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. I told you, we are trying to be annoying, and Shivan Gorge is just going to be annoying if we have nothing else to do. Sorry, everybody take a damage. Or if we have any triplers or doublers or anything else. Sorry, take more damage. We're also adding War Room as some extra card draw. It's a land you can tap for a colorless. You can also pay 3, tap it, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity. Draw a card. Love this card here, especially since we're only 2 colors, so you're only going to have to spend 2 life every time you activate this on top of the 3 mana. And finally, let's just go ahead and wrap up these lands real quick with just lands that tap for colors at this point. Command Tower taps for any mana of your commander's color identity. Exotic Orchard, very similar to Felwar Stone. Blood Crypt, it's a Swamp Mountain. You can tap it for a black or red. And when it enters the battlefield, you can pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. A bit of shocking. Dragon's Skull Summit is a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or mountain. You can tap for a black or red. Luxury Suite is the bond in our colors. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. Probably do. Tap it for black or red. Smoldering Marsh is a swamp mountain that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Sulphurous Springs is a land that taps for a colorless, or you can tap it for a black or red and it deals 1 damage to you. And Jagged Barrens is a desert that enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield it deals 1 damage to target opponent. You can also add a black or red. So if we had something that cares about whenever something deals damage and we don't have Gev on the field, play Jagged Barrens. deals 1 damage to somebody, and then those triggers happen. And finally, we are just adding 7 basic mountains and 4 basic swamps. And that is going to do it. That's my entire deck for Gev Scaled Scorch. That is right. So yeah, comment down below. What do you guys think of this build? Obviously, you guys can change anything you want. This is just the way I'm building this Kindred deck around lizards. I think it's very fun. And I might be taking this to MagicCon Vegas. That is right. I am very excited about this deck. If you guys have watched the box openings, I opened a ton of these cards. I was already planning to make Gev, but I will make this exact deck, and I will play against any one of you that comes and says hello to me in Vegas. Just say, hey, I want to play against Gev, and I'll pull this deck out. If you guys want to see that in Vegas, obviously comment down below and say, bring it to Vegas. So we'll see then. But again, thank you guys for watching. This is just my build. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the like button so we can keep making these awesome videos for you. In the description, you will find links to all of our social media accounts. That is TikTok, that's Twitter, that's Instagram, @GuysThatMagic for each one. On the screen right now, that's right. Those are all of our current Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much for your added support. If you guys wanted to check out what they are seeing, which is not here on YouTube, exclusive content over there, check the description as well and consider subscribing. And until the next video, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.